Graveleros, and welcome to episode 96 of the Groadio podcast. My name is Amanda Nauman, and Bill is here with me today. How's it going, Bill?
Hi, it's going well. Yeah, we're trying something a little different. You know, we started this on cyclocross radio, recording our podcast to also put on YouTube, and it's a whole new interface. So yeah, Amanda, I threw Amanda into this off the deep end. So yeah, we're getting used to new things here.
Yes, we're going to try it. So you have been busy with cyclocross stuff running around since we last talked at Gravel Worlds. Yeah, so thanks for making the time to talk about a little bit of gravel stuff.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I mean, I've been following on the periphery, one of those words, and yeah, a lot of exciting stuff going on. But I need you to kind of fill me in on the nitty gritty of what's happening in the gravel space.
Yes, we will do that. To kick things off, firstly, I would like to remind everyone that our listeners, just like all the listeners for everyone else on the Wide Angle Podium Network, get a free heart rate monitor with the purchase of the new Hammerhead Karoo. You can go to hammerhead.io right now, and when you use promo code Groadio, which is in all caps, at checkout, you can get yours today. And all of our network shows have their own code, so make sure if you're listening to this right now, you use code Groadio in all caps. And Bill, Hammerhead came to Mammoth Tough to run a demo program.
That's awesome. That's how did that go? Were people out there using them?
Yes, yeah. So for people that don't know, we don't really mark our course that much for Mammoth Tough. We kind of do the old school Midwest style where we let people self-navigate. So for a lot of people that don't have the ability to pay for like a really expensive head unit or whatever, it's great for them that they can, test out a unit and see if it's something that they want to buy, or even just to have the ability to use something other than their phone, which was nice. And then the nice thing about Hammerhead, which we've talked about for many years on this show now, is that they're continuously improving new features and coming up with things that make life better when you use the new Karoo. And one of the things we just read is that they've added the ability for Climber to work when you go off of a route that you planned.
Which is a good thing, because, if you've gone off route, this is what I was always taught. If you've gone off route, if you know you've made a wrong turn, always err towards going up rather than down, because it's always harder than if you say, oh, I need to go that way, then you have to climb all the way back up. So this is good that you can still, these climbs are coming and what they look like, and you can just go that way. And then at least then if you figure out you've gone the wrong way, you just have to go back downhill.
Yes, exactly. So I think what happens is like the Climber feature will pop up and it will show you the new way to get back on route, which at some point is going to lead you downhill. So we think that that is a fun new
I'm always
feature.
looking towards how do you get to the point where you get to go downhill. That's kind of my goal in bike riding.
Exactly. So just a reminder, this is an exclusive offer. Basically, that heart rate monitor is about $64. So if you go in and you add both of those things to your cart, it basically takes $64 off the total purchase. So remember, that is promo code Groadio at checkout today.
Yeah, Groadio. And I can tell you that not that you would use your heart rate monitor without anything other than your Hammerhead unit, but if you needed to, you can. It's not like it's a proprietary towards Hammerhead.
Yeah, true. Exactly. You can use other ones as well. It's just nice if you buy a new thing, you sort of get it for free, an extra training tool. Gravel. It's been happening, Bill. It's been happening while you've been watching people do little circles.
Yeah, Ben Frederick has been trying to sell this like short track gravel thing.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about that.
Cyclocross. Yeah. It's fun. I'm glad he's doing it. I'm not sold.
No? You don't think that's going to be the thing that gets people back?
I don't know. It's fine. It's good.
He's trying.
He's
trying.
Not gravel.
I think it's clever.
I mean, it's the concept of gravel, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. I think it's just most people more like know that word more. So for you to attach it to like short track gravel, I think he's trying to get the lowest common denominator of bike racing person to be like, okay, maybe I understand that then. I don't know what cyclocross is, but who knows? Maybe it could lead a few people to try it.
I'm all in favor of it.
Okay.
I like new things. I'm going to
Yes.
try to embrace this. I'm just
So
old, upset in my ways.
I know. We'll think outside the box.
Okay.
So last time we hung out was Garmin Gravel World, which was at the end of August. And since then, you've been running around doing cyclocross. And in the meantime, USA Cycling Gravel Nationals happened, the RAD happened, UCI Gravel Worlds happened. It's been sort of a crazy 6-7 weeks or so of gravel racing, sort of as we close out maybe the gravel season, would we say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
sort of the end of it.
yeah. So there is an end.
I think so. Yeah, I know. I know you think it keeps going, but I think the proverbial end is Big Sugar, at least in this
Yeah, that seems
country.
like that seems right, which is good.
Yep.
No, I wish I could go to Big Sugar. I wish I could go to Little Sugar, even more so. It's just these things are getting like later and later. Everybody used to always yell at cyclocross for starting too early, which fine, I get it, but you know, October and November isn't too early, and we have gravel races, great. We have World Cup mountain bike racing that's still going on. It's like our season for cyclocross is going to be like December 1st until January 2nd.
Yeah.
So you all
Yeah.
can have that time.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing that I thought was interesting was how many cyclocross racers did gravel worlds. And I didn't look to see if that was encroaching on like a European cyclocross schedule. Is it? Like, are they missing cyclocross races to make sure that they could do worlds?
No, in fact, we're recording this on a Saturday. Today really was the first exact cross race in
Oh,
Beringen. So it's really just starting now. And one of the nice things, and I'm sorry, gravel folks, I promise I'll stop with the cyclocross talk now. But one of the things is that they did, as far as Europe goes, the schedule for the World Cups doesn't start until like our Thanksgiving. So it's really later in November. So that gives the opportunity for us domestically in North America to really have a full cyclocross season until the European season, as far as World Cups goes, even kicks off. So that part's been really nice. And the only kind of downside is it starts, and then if people want to come do nationals, they have to be like, okay, now we're going to do the World Cup schedule. Okay, now we have to come back for nationals, then go back and do the rest of the schedule.
got it.
Which
And
is
that's
why
why.
I want to have nationals and Thanksgiving.
Right. Another idea we hate, but it's a good
Yes.
idea now that you explain the schedule layout and why it's like that. But that's
Yeah.
good that that didn't really mess up the cyclocross racer, the European racers in terms the ones that did gravel worlds. They kind of
Yeah.
it was the ender before
Are
really
are
the
we?
season.
I don't want to jump the gun here. I'll just put this out there, and then we can talk about it. Since we're talking about cyclocross, and we can just come back to it. I'll just leave this as a hanging question. Did two cyclocross racers win gravel worlds?
That is a fair question, and
I
my
know
gut reaction was to say yes.
that's because you come from that world.
Yeah, but are you ever not a cyclocross racer? Like,
Yeah. Well,
would Marianne Voss say that she's not anymore?
no, I think she would, but I guess we're going to get into it now quickly. I think that with her, I think that people probably look at her as a road racer first. I think
Yes.
that if you think about Mariana Voss, she is a road racer who has excelled in other disciplines. Matthew Vanderpool was kind of born on a cyclocross bike,
True.
so I think that you sort of equate. Nobody knew about him until when he entered the road, and he had already won like a world championship 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
but you know what? But you know
Cyclocross
what
is
else?
weird.
He was also a world junior road champion. So I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. That's like when Alaphilippe was like super fast and people kept being like, oh, he's a cyclocross racer too. He had
Right?
done like a
Because
handful of cyclocross
right.
races. Like, yeah, sure. Well, I'll claim him.
Yeah. I think Vanderpool has more of a legit claim to being a cyclocross racer, or and was a full-time cyclocross racer at one point.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
All right, but let's start. I want to start with Gravel Nationals just because I need I guess the hip terminology these days, vibe check. I need a Gravel Nationals vibe check from this is where I need your help, because when I'm on the outside now looking at these things, I think I get a potentially skewed view as to how these things are being accepted. This is the second year, right? This is the second Gravel Nationals.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was there a decline in excitement, in participation, in coverage from year one? For
I
me,
don't
that's what
think
it
so.
kind of seemed like. So you don't think so? Okay, good.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
mean, they still had 500 plus, close to 600 participants across all of the categories, which I think is a solid showing for a gravel nationals race. And they still had prize money. I think that part of it might have been less. I think the prize money was a little bit less than when they came out with the splash last year. But as far as vibe check, like, I mean, they still did like fun pre-rides. The Thank Gravel It's Friday crew went out to do the pre-rides the day before, which they're fun, like California, Colorado based, super vibey, like cool kids doing gravel check, which I mean, that kind of brings an element of fun into it, and like a lot less serious of like, this is just a race and people are here to race. They wanted to make sure that people knew that people were there also just to have fun and go to a fun gravel event as well. That sort of had this element of stars and stripes jerseys on the line for a lot of people included. And I think that's what Gravel Nationals always wanted. Was USA Cycling said, we're not going to try and come in here and just be a race. We still want people to come here and have a good time as well. And they did that. So I think they did a good job of like making sure there was a balance of both. They gave the women their own kind of field to play with and told them no drafting. And so they were allowed to have their own race in that capacity. And it was also year 2 of this event, so people knew what to expect with the courses and knew that there was a lot of sand, and were able to sort of plan for that in a way that Gravel Worlds, for example, will always be in a different location for like the next 5 or 6 years, and there's not going to be that sort of like anticipation of how to race a course. I think USA Cycling doing it this way is good because people can sort of know what to anticipate. But that being said, it will also be a new location for next year.
Yeah, moving to Minnesota for
Yeah.
next 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into like the results and everything, this is an existential question for you.
Okay.
Let me see how I can like politely put this. You are now of a generation of gravel racer where you will have gone through your whole competitive career with never racing gravel nationals. Does that
Mm-hmm.
seem weird?
Yes, but I'm also okay with that because, yeah, I liked how it was. I'm also okay
Right,
with
but
not.
that's kind of to say this is how much the sport has changed, or
Yeah.
the discipline has changed.
Yeah, precisely. And I think you'll enjoy my conversation with Kylie Spearing because she's 9 years younger than me. And it was such a different conversation in the way that she approaches, the bike racing and the USA Cycling and UCI, and there's points. And I'm like, this is so wild and like completely out of the realm of what I ever thought was possible a decade ago. But it's fun. Like, I love seeing people be super serious about it and want to take this seriously and get a Stars and Stripes jersey that's legitimate. Like, you see Brennan Wirtz's celebration at the finish line. It was like he had won Unbound, like it meant a lot to him. So I like it. I enjoy it.
Because in the end, it does mean a lot. I think that's, and I think just as you are speaking to people who are younger, people who just don't sort of have that gravel baggage with them, it's still a Stars and Stripes jersey. And if anything means anything in American cycling, it's winning a national championship, no matter what the the discipline is. That's kind of that's one of the top tiers of racing, just under worlds. Like everybody wants that stars and stripes. So that's still a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I think they did it the right way. They gave people the chance to race a pretty traditional American gravel course and kind of see how it would shake out. And it looked like it was a lot of fun. So I commend them for putting it together. And one of the takeaways I heard was that it was also a very safe and well-run event in terms of like course closures and rolling intersections and making sure that those were closed off. And I had done a call with USA Cycling a few years ago when they were trying to come up with, how do we do nationals right? They did do a few of those phone calls to make sure that they were going to put out a good event. And that was the thing that I had told them back then was like, I was like, if you were going to set yourself apart from any other gravel event in the United States, if you emphasize safety because USA Cycling is so good at that, you'll have people come to your race just because they want to be in a safe environment and not have to worry about cars and intersections. And so I told them that from the very beginning, and I'm glad that they've sort of stuck to that and been able to offer racers not necessarily a closed course, but the feeling of being very well taken care of at those intersections and not having to worry about cars as much as some other events.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's like should be number one thing that events are
Yeah.
concerned with. So that's good to hear. As far as the racing goes, so I want to start just with the men, because what I don't see in the top 5 of the results is Keegan Swenson. But I know he was there.
Yeah, it sounded like the men's race had to play a bit more tactically. And the cool thing about the finish line photo for this race is Brennan is celebrating like crazy. And in the background of the finish photo, you see all these guys like just turning the corner behind him. So at some point, closing in on the finish line, he gets a gap, and it's very small gap. It could just be seconds, but he is able to sort of hold it to the line enough that that finish line photo makes it look like he has a huge gap on everyone, but I'm sure from the actual timing perspective, it's pretty short. But I guess that the guys were trying to throw haymakers to get any sort of gap that they could, knowing the way that the course is laid out, which was a bit more flat, but had these like massive sandboxes every once in a while. So I know that some teammates or people riding for other people might have been going across to try and create gaps and make that happen. And I think that was one of the things that Keegan had mentioned in his Instagram post was that their tactics, they messed up and he wasn't able to sort of get away in the way that he wanted to. But I think that means it was a cool course. And like if it had to come down to that and they actually had to play games, then that makes it better than just being like the strong man going off the front potentially.
Yeah, for sure. So Wirtz taking that, Borselman second. Colby Simmons, road racer, Quinn Simmons' brother, out there racing gravel. Interesting, getting third step on the podium. Fincy in fourth, and then Griffin Easter in fifth. Anything stand out in those
No,
results?
I mean, just, yeah, like you said, that Keegan was off the wide angle podium for that. I didn't know that Colby was Quinn Simmons' brother. Is it a younger brother? I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
cool.
he's on the Visma Lisa bike like development team.
Okay.
So he races in Europe.
Yeah. And one of the things I am curious to know is if these riders knew going into nationals that if winning still meant that they weren't going to get a free ride to Gravel Worlds, because that became the talk after the race was that, whether or not people were going to pay the money to go to Gravel Worlds. But I'm curious if Keegan knew that going into this race, that like if he won or if he finished sixth, he was still going to have to pay his way to UCI Gravel Worlds. That was one thing I was thinking about later.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder if I've never, as you know, in other disciplines, this is kind of my hobby of going through criteria for worlds teams, and usually within that, like for mountain biking and even for cyclocross, because there's some outside funding through the Mud Fund, that if you meet certain criteria, then you are fully funded for these trips. And then if you meet, if you're a discretionary pick or you meet like a second tier, you may be like partially funded. And then, down from there, you're not funded at all. I'm curious if there is a world's criteria document for gravel that has that spelled out. I'm assuming there
Yes.
is.
Yeah, there is, and it primarily focuses on eligibility and selection. So it says athletes who receive automatic invitations from the UCI or are nominated by USA Cycling discretionary selection procedures are responsible for the full expense associated with this event. But it doesn't talk about it. It only says if you are like national champion or if you've been top 3 at Worlds, you get auto qualified. But it doesn't talk about the money for the like auto qualify. But they basically say if you've been picked for any other reason, you have to pay for it. But I think it was the like specifically national champions that I was wondering about if they gave them anything at all.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise me that they don't, because in other disciplines, that just winning a national championship sometimes isn't even a criteria, or is a very low criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's going to change to a situation much like we see in mountain biking and cyclocross, where how you qualify for Worlds is dependent on how you race against Europeans, which would be really wild for gravel since it is such a big sport in the US. But you look at mountain biking, for instance, it's how you do in World Cup races that take place in Europe, like near when Worlds is happening. They want to know that you are at the top of your game against the best in the world close to the event. That would be even more, you're already talking about like this kind of sea change in how athletes approach gravel. That would be like even more, because then that just kicks it into, this is no longer an American sport.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I know that you love this stuff, so I'm just going to read you what like the overarching goal is in this qualification document. It says USA Cycling's primary objective for the 2024 World Championships is to select a highly cohesive, medal-capable team. The second objective is to choose future medal-capable athletes and provide them with the necessary experience to further their development.
Always love the term, or the phrase, future medal capable. That's one of the greatest USA Cycling phrases in all the disciplines. Future medal capable. You get out there, USA Cycling crystal ball, and figure it all out. But that's a big ask, and I know when people are complaining about it, or just like saying, not even complaining, just kind of putting on social media why they weren't going to Worlds. A lot of it had to do with not being funded. And we saw people from Australia, New Zealand, and some other places say, hey, we got to pay our own way too. This isn't exclusive just to you all. We don't depend on our federations to do anything, which I kind of found was interesting. I didn't see any like Dutch or Belgians or French, piping in to say that they also have to pay their way. So I'm sure there are some nations that are still helping do this, but I think the biggest ask in that mission statement, which is just wild, is you are asking athletes to pay a lot of money to go help somebody else win or get on a podium, and that's just fascinating. Like, we don't do that for road worlds. You're not asking like, hey, we got to put together a road team. This is a flat course. It's going to be a sprinter's course. We got to get some big men and women, powerful men and women in there to be able to drive our team home. Who wants to pay to go to the road worlds to do this for Team USA? That's a tough one. I know. That's a tough one.
I know. And this is the thing I told Kylie yesterday. I was like, from my perspective with cyclocross, how they do things for mountain biking and road, they've always been so careful with their wording in those documents to be able to cover their asses for, like, cyclocross, when they say that they're not even going to let people go, even if they wanted to pay their way. to then have this completely vague statement on the goal for gravel and just be like, and however many other people that want development. It's like, okay, that covers anyone that wants to go then. And yeah, I think it's fascinating. And I get it because it's new. They are trying to sort of like grow it. But I think what happened last year was that they did pay some money and they did get some people there. And so to take that away in the following year, I'm sure people were like, well, I got this last year. If I don't get this money again, then I'm just not going to go. And it sort of changes then the dynamic and the meaning maybe of that race for some people.
Yeah. Very interesting. All right. We keep jumping ahead to Worlds. Quickly, I don't think we really put a button on nationals with the women.
Yep. Lauren Stevens took it for the win. We probably could have predicted that just from the way that we saw her ride Garmin Gravel Worlds and SBT. She, I think, has been the dominant American, specifically gravel rider, I would say. Like, I think she's sort of like put her stamp on being that. That being said, she did go to Road Worlds, which was like a couple weekends before gravel UCI World. So she's definitely got that experience of like racing internationally and being able to be the national champion for the women and sort of push that forward. I think a Lauren Stevens and an LDC battle for nationals was awesome. And so to kind of have them come down and be 1-2 in that field was super cool to see, just because Lauren has been dominating a lot of the gravel races as well for the LifeTime Grand Prix, for instance, winning the Rad just a couple weeks later. So I think that was a fun battle. Paige Onweller finishing third. It was just cool to see the women that care about sort of putting that stars and stripes for gravel on and having a good race.
I almost asked why Sophia wasn't there before realizing she doesn't race in the U.S. National Championships.
Yep, correct.
She
Or else
needs
that would have been even cooler.
Yeah, I wonder when Argentina is going to have a gravel national championship race.
Maybe they could. Yeah, we'll see.
Should we move? What should we move on to? The Rad?
Yeah,
Got a
sure.
Grand Prix race?
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's going to be a fun topic as well. The rest of the LifeTime Grand Prix and sort of how that overall has shaken out. And also because we'll just preface it now, the Rad is not part of the LifeTime Grand Prix for next year. So
This was they didn't know it at the time, but this was the
yeah.
finale of the Rad for. Well, I mean, who knows? That's the thing. Like, it could come back if the Grand Prix continues. Maybe it comes back at some point. Maybe this is. And we'll get to it. You know, with their kind of smaller schedule, maybe they're going to swap in some races, or maybe they're just like sticking with the ones they know that work.
Yeah, and a really amazing thing to me was that the rider reports from this race, everybody mentioned how much they loved the course and how rad it was. It really. And so to hear all of those race reports and them being like, this is one of the coolest and like underrated gravel events in the country, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, it's not going to be in the Grand Prix next year. It was kind of surprising.
Yeah, I wonder if was it a logistics? I don't know. I don't even know why. I guess we should learn more on why maybe these decisions were made. But yeah, that's really interesting that you're taking one that people like. I'm really fascinated by the whole, and we'll get to it, just the whole LifeTime schedule and what was behind that. It seems, yeah, again, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about cyclocross, but cyclocross for the World Cups used to be like 8 races. And then the Flanders Classics bought it and they were like, we're going to have 16 races for World Cups. They never got to that, but I think they got to like 12 one year, which was really a lot. And then they were like, that's too much. And they started going and just kind of consolidating it back. I think it's back to 8 again. And that seems to be, more condensed time frame what LifeTime has done with the Grand Prix, where it was like, we have this, it really works. Let's expand it. Too much. Let's kind of get back to something that works.
And hey, they're trying everything, right? And see
yeah,
sticks.
no, so. It's not a criticism. It's just interesting that these things seem to follow a similar pattern in a lot of these
Yep.
organizations.
Well, on the men's side, I will tell you my biggest surprise was that Alexei was the defending champion, and he DNF'd. I didn't look up to see if it was a mechanical reason or what, but that is one maybe bummer of the season on the men's side for me, is that Alexei is just like nowhere in the picture right now in terms of defending a top position in the overall and even defending his championship title from this race last year. So he DNF'd. Keegan Swenson took the win on this one. Pete Stetina finishing second, which is great. And like I said before, I wish that Tusher had happened, because I think it's another style of race like the Rad where Pete could give Keegan a run for his money in this sort of like climby, high altitude situation. And then the really exciting thing was that Griffin Easter finished third. So you and I had a nice little chat with him at Garmin Gravel Worlds. We ran into Griffin and got to talk to him for a long time. And he sort of just had like a few really good results at nationals and here at the Rad in this past couple months. And so I'm really excited to see him get this result. He lives in a place in Utah that kind of does have that altitude advantage. So a race like him, like this, excuse me, in a race like Tusher would suit him just like Pete. So cool to see him be able to stand on that podium. When I saw the podium photo, I was like, oh, that's Griffin. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. It was good to see him. Though I really enjoyed that conversation that we had at Gravel World. So stoked he's having that success.
Yep. Matt Beers, Brendan Johnson rounding out the wide angle podium for the men.
Yeah. Interesting race on the women's side.
Yeah, I guess like LDC sort of just like went away and took it. And if you just look at the results, you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But she had an 8-minute gap over Sophia, which is just bananas. And I think I'm curious to know if she knew the gaps, if she was just like riding away, like as soon as maybe she had a couple minutes, maybe just nobody told her what the gap was after that. And she sort of just like kept riding as if they were chasing her. But I think that's a good story, that, never give up mentality of like, if you even have 5 minutes, just keep turning the screws and make it a little bit more.
Do you know what was the start like for the women's, and then did they have their own start, and then, or was it, quickly swallowed up? Do you know any of that?
No, I don't. In terms of the categories behind, I don't know. And I also don't know if they told them no drafting or not, but it didn't seem like it was part of any of the storylines from what people were talking about. They had their own separate wave, and I guess it stayed together and sort of dwindled as it got to checkpoint 8 stations. But yeah, at a certain point, LDC gets away, and Sophia and Cecily were together for a while, and then Sophia ended up getting away, and Cecily finished third. And those gaps are pretty big behind after that. So I think the women's field sort of just slowly exploded as they got to the finish.
Yeah, and I guess the other kind of result of this event is that Sophia and Keegan both wrapped up the LifeTime Grand Prix overall, which means that they can just chill out now. Big Sugar.
Yeah. I read that. I guess in the rules they have all you have to do is start. So they just need to start the race, and they have it in the bag. They don't actually even have to finish.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It would be kind of fun. My challenge for them is just to like start and then just kind of party pace it. Go back and like race with everybody else in the back. Just hang out.
That would be a good story, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? Maybe
I have a feeling both of them won't do that.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably not
If there is a race to be won, I believe, yes, both of them will want to win it.
Yes, exactly. So Little Sugar is tomorrow. We're recording today on Saturday. And then Big Sugar will be October 19th to wrap up that overall.
Yeah, Little Sugar, it's last year as an independent event.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be part of the series. So I'm assuming after that announcement, maybe we'll see some more of the Grand Prix riders that are actually going to be in it tomorrow, just so that they maybe know what to expect for next year.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, moving on, since we already kind of like talked about it before a little bit, let's talk about Gravel Worlds.
Yeah, UCI Gravel World. I feel like I have
UCI
to
Gravel World.
distinguish.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, no. I'm sorry. And I apologize to the Gravel World folks. Let's talk about UCI Gravel World Championship.
Yes. Yes. The full title. Well, speaking of which, real quick, I will say, this has been announced, but Garmin Gravel Worlds is now Lauf Gravel World. So they got a new title sponsor for next year. So we'll for this year continue to reference it as Garmin Gravel Worlds, but in the future it will be Lauf Gravel Worlds going forward. So,
Okay.
but for now, yeah, UCI Gravel World Championships was held last weekend in Belgium,
Leuven.
and yeah, it looked like a pretty cool course. I had some people texting me being like, do they know this is like actually Belgian waffle ride? Like truly the definition of Belgian waffle ride, because it is in Belgium and it is a gravel race. And even the style of it was very Belgian waffle ride-esque, which is what I'm pretty sure we talked about last year for UCI Gravel Worlds, was that the course was like very bike path and sectors, and in the way that Michael Marks had always intended his race to be. It's funny how it is now how the UCI Gravel Worlds races that are going to be in Europe will probably have that same vibe forever in the future. So I think that that's fun.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, having actually ridden on some of the paths and sidewalks and roads and stuff that the event took place on, it was kind of fun to see, and it was great. Yeah, you'd be like on the bike path and then you take a left turn and then you just be like in somebody's grass path between their houses, or these little wooded sections. It almost got to like single track at some points. It's especially like double track a lot of it, but it was a lot of dirt out there.
Yeah. David and I watched the highlights this morning, and he was like, at the beginning, he's like, "Where's the gravel?" And then it gets, in the farm roads, and then they start showing all of the actual paths that they go on. And I was like, "Okay, I can see it now. It's an actual gravel race, as best as they can do it there."
But
The women's
and
race.
that's yeah. No, I was just saying that's a good way of saying it. The best that they can, because what they can really do is road races, and this
Mhm.
had that feel. And in to me, in the best way, like seeing when they came through Leuven every time, and just the crowds that were on the sides, and you had, just the tactics in the racing. I'm like, this just looked like a fall classic to me. Like you could say, like, Paris-Roubaix, and then, and then Flanders, take away the cobbles, put gravel in instead. And this was kind of the same race. And that's kind of how it played out too.
Yeah, exactly.
The
And
only the only difference was you had like 1,000 Masters racers that that had to be bobbed and weaved around. But other than that, it looked like a classics road race.
yeah, yeah, and I wonder if they are gonna have to sort of change that like loop format at the end where Vanderpool's dodging Masters guys.
Oh, it was
Um,
so. I mean, yeah. Just to jump ahead with Vanderpool, the best thing was watching these guys and watching them look behind them and go and do a double take and go, "That's Matthew Vanderpool," and then and if they had like the orange jersey on, they were like, "That's my teammate," and they were just like going, and he was just gotta be like, "Get out of my way."
I know, but it's like the spirit of gravel right there. I don't know. I just it was so like, okay, this is actually a
the
gravel
the
race, and
yeah the saddest one was there was an Italian guy, another like group rider, who was probably lapped a couple times, who was like on a climb, turns around, sees Vanderpool just flustered, and almost like tips over. He's trying to get over and is like tipping over as like Vanderpool's coming through. And I'm like, oh boy, please don't take him out.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's
good
funny.
stuff.
Maybe they're gonna need like a lead moto to start with, just like Just like
I think they
unbound.
just well, here's the thing. Here's what they did that was different. Where I kind of got a kick out of that, and I didn't think it got away of the racing. But what they did differently, how they solved the single finish. I don't know if you might not have seen this in the highlights, is that they had like a moto cop basically at the turn for the finish, and if you weren't in the pro race, they just stopped you. It's like, we might find your race is still going, that's fine, but you're going to sit here for 5 minutes while they finish. Maybe we'll find a gap and then let you go, but like there was nobody in the way for the finish, because they were just like, you could see them all just kind of stop there at before they entered the final stretch.
Fascinating. That was their way to fix
They
it.
didn't care about that. That's where the spirit of gravel kind of disappears. There was no lifetime everybody is equal. They were like, no, you all are not equal to the guy who's going to win the championship right there.
Yeah. Yep. There is a hierarchy here.
There is a hierarchy. And the thing is, I think that especially in Belgium and, Netherlands and stuff, they completely understand that and they are fine with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're just probably happy to be able to say they were in the same race as Matthew van der Poel.
I raced against Matthew van der Poel in the World Championship.
Mm-hmm. So this race, we're talking about van der Poel, and they raced on Sunday, and the women raced on Saturday. So
which was also awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, separate stages basically to be able to do their own thing. The way that they sort of separated that, I think the older men and the older women raced behind the pro women on Saturday, and then some of the younger men's categories raced the same course on Sunday. And so I sort of covered this a little bit more with Kylie in the interview episode that's coming next, but I asked her a lot about how she feels about how the women's race is shorter. Primarily because a few years ago when I did that conversation with Whitney Allison, she was very adamant about, I'm never going to race a UCI race until things feel more equal. And part of her problem was the distance not being equal. But she went and raced UCI Gravel World Championships this year. And so I'm sure the feeling has sort of shifted away from not worrying as much about the distance being equal per se as the media coverage and having the ability to have their own race. So the priorities, I think, have changed a little bit in terms of like what people feel is important to see from the UCI, and if they're going to be able to support that and that sort of distance, and the time that they're racing seems to not matter as much as it has maybe in the past.
I want them to be equal. My question is distance the right metric? I'm going to break my not talking about cyclocross again rule. But if you have like a cyclocross race, it is time-based. Granted, the women should still be racing as long as the men, but if you look at how far everyone is racing, the men are racing usually like at least a lap more in the same time allotment. So if you knew a course was going to race, say, 5 hours for the men and 5 hours for the women, is that equal?
So the men raced 4 hours and 41 minutes, and the women finished in 4 hours. That's close enough.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I'm not saying I wanted. This is my thing is I want these to be equal. I'm just and I think Sophia said the same thing right before, where she didn't think that different distances mattered because the distance or the time was closer. So that's kind of my question. If it's not, I am wrong in this, I will completely support having to race the same distance. That's just my question. It's like there are different metrics that can be looked at.
Yeah, I agree.
I know that both groups of athletes are capable of doing the same distance. That shouldn't even be a question anymore. I know that used to be the old school thing. The women can handle it. I'm hoping we're all beyond that. But my question is, like, if it's time, then is that still kind of the same?
Yeah, that's probably what they're going for, is around 4 to 5 hours, I'm guessing, is sort of like the goal. Um, but yeah, no, I hear you. I think that that mentality has shifted because as Americans for gravel racing here, we do the same course. We line up at the same time. That is in our head of like, that's why gravel always felt equal, as we were just doing the same thing. But as it changes to the women want their own start or basically their own race, and this is how they do it in Europe, and no one really questions that because they get their own race day, they get their own media coverage and stage. That seems to be what the women want as far as like advocating for something. And even if that means they raced for 40 minutes less than Vanderpool, I think they were all happy that they had their own stage on Saturday to do it.
Yeah, and you look at mountain bike world championships; they're racing the same amount of time, the men and the women, but it's same thing. The women are racing like usually a lap less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like that part is normal. It's for some reason like the uncomfortable thing for the Americans is like, okay, but it still feels weird because that's not how we did
Yeah, no,
gravel.
I get it. I completely get it,
Yeah.
and I think the way that they've kind of addressed it, and I'm not trying to make like the UCI like the super progressive organization, but I think even if you look at how they do road racing, the women's Tour de France versus the men's Tour de France. Granted, it's not 3 weeks, but it's also they're different courses. They're not just like matching. It's like this is a different event for a different group of people that doesn't necessarily have to mimic what the other event is.
Yeah,
I'm sure
exactly.
they do that for the classics as well. There's slightly different courses, which is good because then you don't have to have that comparison, and that's why it's great that they're on these different days, and so I don't know. I want it all
Yeah.
to be equal, but I also think that there are different ways of looking at that equity.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Oh, things have changed.
Yes.
Maybe my last point that I thought was interesting about at least the men's race, Vanderpool, there's like an old clip of him talking to a Shimano person in an interview from like 4 years ago. And he's like, would you ever race gravel? And Vanderpool was like, I mean, if I go ride gravel paths, like I just do it on my cyclocross bike. And that's how I do gravel for now. And like fast forward, he has a rainbow jersey for gravel now, which is fascinating. But it was also cool to see him like be on a gravel bike with wider tires. Like that was the thing that stood out to me watching it, was seeing these like donuts on Vanderpool. That is not something that I was used to seeing. It was kind of fun to see him actually be riding equipment that suited the style of racing that he was
Yeah.
doing.
My Did you watch the post race interview with Vanderpool?
No, what do you say?
It was what he said, but the poor guy. One of the questions he asked, he was like, "So you've won a gravel world championship. You have a gravel rainbow jersey. Where does that rank?" And I was like, "Oh, don't ask this."
No. What do you say?
He was as diplomatic as he could be, but he was like, "No, I think the other ones might be more important."
Oh
It's
no.
like, believe it or not, winning world championship on the road may still carry a little more weight than gravel.
Oh, that's hilarious. Good. That's a good answer, I guess.
Yeah, and thankfully he didn't like delineate between if it was bigger than winning cyclocross world championships. I'm hoping it wasn't.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
But he
And
did
then
it. Yeah,
come on.
I know. Yeah. Surprised, but not surprised. I'm glad that she won that sprint the way that she did. I don't think she's had a lot of good luck this year, so it was kind of fun to see her cat and mouse that perfectly at the end, as she does know how to do, but sometimes the other younger riders seem to have a little bit more legs. So I was happy to see. I mean, probably you could say perhaps she was more efficient on a course like this, knowing how to take turns and save something up for the end to be able to do that.
All right. All right. I think that pretty much sums up everything that I missed. So thank you for filling me in on all of that gravel news. What do we got? But now we can look ahead, Amanda. We can look ahead to 2025. What news has come out that we are getting excited about or should be aware of?
Yeah, a lot. So it seems that as the year sort of winds down and we still have the attention of gravel fans and gravel racers, it seems like all of the big series and events are making sure that their information is going out now and like registrations are opening. So we briefly mentioned it earlier, but USA Cycling Gravel Nationals for the next 2 years will be in Minnesota, and they are actually also starting to push it 2 more weeks farther than what it has traditionally been. So it will be the third week of September for 2025. The UCI Gravel World Series calendar is going to be announced soon now that World Championships is over. The Belgian Waffle Ride series for next year has been announced. There's going to be 4 major races in their series. SBT had to pivot, so we can talk about that and the new dates that they've had to announce. And then finally, the LifeTime Grand Prix has announced their plans for next year as well, which are wildly different than what we're used to. A lot of stuff.
I'd like to talk a little more about that SBT drama, because I think the last time that we talked, we weren't sure that SBT was going to continue.
Yeah, exactly. And they've had quite a bit of like back and forth with the town and the angry citizens of Routt County that just aren't happy that they're there. And there's just been such a big push and pull of, can the event happen that the way that they want it and also be financially viable? I think that that's been the big thing for them, is like, sure, we can slim it down, but like we still have employees and staff that we have to pay. And this was like a 4,000 person event. So what they've done is they've decided to pivot because the law enforcement got involved and said that because this is a competitive event, there's too many people. It is unsafe because you are timing it and there are prizes involved. And so because of that, they forced them into doing a non-competitive day and then doing a competitive day the following day to be able to have that sort of race environment as well. But that still limits them. So there's going to be 1,800 riders maximum on Saturday and then 750 riders maximum for the timed race on Sunday. And also, we're talking about June. So this is going to be the end of June for next year.
What are your feelings on that? I mean, just knowing people who show up to these events, is it enough if you start your Hammerhead crew at the beginning and know the time that you got at the end and are happy with that and happy with finishing, or does having an official time matter for the masses?
I don't think it matters as much. I'm just curious to see how they allow the signups for Sunday and sort of what the prizes are for like age group categories, because 750 people really isn't a lot compared to what they were used to. I'm sure there are a lot of people that go there just to ride, and I think 1,800 people is enough of a crowd that people still want to go to Steamboat and experience those roads in that way. The way that they sort of structure the race for Sunday, I'm most interested to see in terms of like the categories and who they allowed to race, because I'm sure it's not just elites. They're not going to find that many people to fill that. So it'll be interesting to see how people choose, I guess, on which day they want to race.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be more of a lottery for that, and then you get kicked into the Sunday if you want. I wonder if the registration fees are going to be different for Saturday and Sunday. I'm assuming they will be. Yeah, stuff to look forward to as it is known.
Right.
All right. What else we want to chat about? Lifetime. Let's talk about the Lifetime Grand Prix.
Yeah. They came out with the announcement to get riders, I think, prepared on how to race or what to expect after Big Sugar, basically, and how to sort of approach the planning phase for next year. But to do so, they had to get their calendar out as well and sort of get people prepared on the kind of races that they need to get ready for. And I will preface this with, I think the narrative that we've heard from a lot of racers who have either chosen to do the Grand Prix or not have always said, well, it always favors people who live in altitude and are potentially good climbers. And so we've seen people leave the LifeTime Grand Prix because they're like, I don't live at altitude and I'm not a good climber, and therefore this series does not suit me. And I think that they're kind of afraid of people clinging on to that narrative because of Tusher in the Crusher and the Rad being at a higher altitude, them thinking that they're never going to have a chance because of races like that. So perhaps to eliminate that narrative, they have taken Crusher and the Tusher out and the Rad out for next year's race. So next year will be best 5 out of 6, and the 6 are Sea Otter Classic, Unbound Gravel, the Leadville Trail 100, Schwamigan, Little Sugar, Big Sugar.
Amanda,
Mm-hmm.
is the LifeTime Grand Prix now a mountain biking series?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Yes. 4 out of 6.
Kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
Because this is supposed, everybody forgets about like the mountain biking part of the Grand Prix, I think, for the most part. And they just, I think it is thought of predominantly as a gravel series. And
maybe because it's not an Olympic year, they think they can get some more of the mountain bikers.
maybe. Yeah. It's just interesting how it's kind of shifted toward, and I think what you say seems sound with just not having those altitude races. I mean, you have Leadville, but I think that's really it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That totally changes it. Changes it.
It's going to be really interesting. 5 of 6. So walk me through so we're starting out with 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of them get in right away?
So they technically start with 22.
2. Okay.
Yeah, the application is open for people listening October 14th to October 28th. And they're going to choose 22 on both sides that they announce on November 7th. And then there will be like a bunch of wild card spots. But what I want to know is whether we as the viewers and the fans and the riders also, if they get to know the list of wild cards between November 7th and May 31st, which is after Unbound Gravel, because that part would be fun to follow. Because essentially they're saying these 22 for sure. And also, by the way, if you're a wild card rider and you end up in the top 3 of those wild cards by Unbound, then we're going to include you in the rest of the series because you have shown commitment and results to sort of carry forward through the rest of the series. And it would be so fun to follow the like wild card race within the race.
Yeah. So to clarify that, you have to apply for a wild card position. Well, you have to apply for the LifeTime, right? And if you're not chosen as one of those 22 racers, you still have a second chance to be given a spot in the LifeTime Grand Prix. But what you then have to do after being in that application pool is show up to Sea Otter and show up to Unbound, and then you have to place within the top 3 of all of the people who applied and didn't get in, right?
Yes.
That's it. So it's the top 3 of that wild card pool, and then they will pick those people out. I hope they do, because it also is that much more of the race within the race for the people who are racing. If you and I both, well, you and I wouldn't because we've been in different ones, but if there are people out there and they're like, oh, Steve up there is also, didn't make it into the Grand Prix and is racing, I need to be in front of Steve, even though we both might be 20th on that Sea Otter coming around for that last lap. It's just kind of a time trial. Go as hard as you can and try to beat as many people as you can. But it'd be cool if it should be on your, how they have like for Sea Otter, they have the different colored number plates. There should be like a wild card number plate.
Yes.
They may
Yeah.
already be doing this, and they're like, guys, we're already doing
Yeah,
that. But that
whatever.
would
We're
be,
gonna
yeah,
speculate. This is a good idea. I think it would be, yeah, because imagine yourself in the Unbound Peloton, and there's like 6 wild cards with you. You're like, shit, we gotta get these people out of here, or whatever, because you know that they were like the other ones selected. But yeah, currently, so last year they had selected 30, right? So that means that there's like 7, 8-ish on both sides that potentially aren't going to be included next year, and maybe even more from riders that hadn't get selected in the past. But then there's so many questions, like, do these people have to pay? How big is the wild card pool? Are they going to pick like 20, or what is that going to look like? So I have a lot more follow-up questions, but I think my big takeaway is that it's exciting to sort of put this race within the race. And it's something we've talked about before, of like, give the underdogs the opportunity then to prove themselves and actually have something to shoot for, as instead of show up to Unbound and good luck, and hopefully that helps your application for the following year. This is something like tangible that they can actually race towards.
yeah. And then the other thing that I like is that no auto bids, and the reason I like it is because I want to see them. I want to see them not pick Keegan and Sophia to be in next year, and just say, no, you all have to apply like everybody else. You're not auto selected, along with anybody else that finished up high.
Yeah, no special treatment. I think it was like the top 15, I think, last year that got in. So yeah.
Sure,
a lot of things. We don't know the prize money. We don't know their registration plan. There's still a lot of open-ended things for next year, but we do know the application period is open, and so riders can start throwing their name in the hat.
Okay. We're right about at an hour.
Yeah, that was perfect.
That was perfect. We got nothing else to talk about, right?
I don't think so. That was good. There's a lot of stuff that's happened, and thanks for playing along and asking all the questions about it.
This was fun. I'm glad we got to do this. I know that we haven't had an episode up for a couple of weeks, but I think we should give Amanda some grace on that. A, because she's been doing a ton, and B, because she absolutely crushed it before that with episode after episode after episode. But that's kind of starting up again, where you got I saw your calendar. We're gonna be moving forward here with Groadio episodes.
Yes, yeah. So everyone listening, after Big Sugar, I've got some good interviews planned that'll come out. I think everybody's busy in this next week or so. So it'll be fun to sort of get everyone's take on how the season shook out and maybe what people's plans are for next year. It's always changing, and it's been fun to follow along this year.
Yep, and everybody should go to the Wide Angle Podium channel on YouTube. And if what I am saying right now is still in the audio version that you're listening to, it means that we successfully uploaded it to YouTube as well. So it's just another way that I know people are now consuming podcasts. So we'll be over there as well. And yeah, I think that's it. Go buy a Hammerhead with your heart rate monitor. Use the Groadio, I almost said the wrong one. Use the Groadio code.
And go follow at Wide Angle Podium on Instagram, because Bill and Michael Bodingheimer have been doing a ton of cyclocross coverage, and it has been awesome. Yes, we will always still talk about cyclocross on this Gravel podcast because we love it, and the season is rolling, and it's been fun to follow along. So go check that out if you have no idea what I'm talking about.
All right. Talk to y'all later.